Inspire with Nendrix, the foundation.
Welcome back. Welcome back to Your Best Life with Dr. Hairston, president and founder of Embracing Arms Incorporated and the creator for the brand movement hashtag Your Best Life. It is June, everyone. Can you get excited about June? This is the month where we celebrate and honor our fathers. As a mother of three, two of which are males and fathers, I have grown increasingly interested in the plight of fathers and fatherhood, watching the challenges that my sons have had to face as paternal parents, and even challenges that I have had to face as a paternal grandmother, really propelled me into wanting to do more in the area of fatherhood and fathership. Research has revealed and pretty much squelched the myths and assumptions about what historically had been believed regarding fathers and their participation or lack thereof, and fathers' influence on the overall development of children. What we do know is that current research supports the realization that our children need their fathers, and the fathers, while non-custodial or not, have played a significant role in their children's development. In fact, a recent study revealed that Black fathers are more involved with their kids on a daily basis than any other racial groups and have had a powerful impact on their children's outcomes. However, our fathers still need support. Resources to support parents have historically been designed with a maternal message, and the marketing of those resources are still created, intentionally or not, to attract the mother. And that is something that must be changed. This is part 2 of a series of conversations that I will be having with fathers all over the country to discuss fatherhood, obstacles, their reflections on Black Lives Matters, and parenting in the 21st century. So my first guest, one of my favorite people probably in the entire planet, is Mr. Maurice Perkins. Mr. Maurice Perkins is actually a father. He is a husband of an amazing woman. Her name is Arlisha Perkins. He is a director of communications and marketing at the University of Minnesota, and he's also an entrepreneur. Maurice, welcome, and thank you for taking the time to be a part of our fatherhood series, My Father, A Conversation, part 2 of 5. So tell us a little bit about you and why focusing on fatherhood is so important to you, aside from the obvious reasons.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for the invitation. I greatly appreciate it. I'm a native Houstonian and recently relocated to Minnesota. So this topic is actually a great topic for me because I'm not with my kids. Even though my kids are grown, I'm apart from them. So this is a great topic to discuss for me. As my wife and I, we say all the time, you know, we're going to always be parents. We're going to forever be parents. And I'm going to forever be a father. So, and I feel it's very important, especially in the African-American Black community, that the father presence is a dominant figure in our community.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and I share that same sentiment in terms of, on the flip side, as a mother, our kids are all over the country, just everywhere, and it's harder for us to get to them and reach out to them, especially during these times, and it can be a little overwhelming, but we're hoping that they're safe where they're at, and that we can stay in contact with them the best way that we can, to keep them focused. So I definitely feel your sentiment in terms of having your children all over the place. So just thinking about your fathering, and your experience with being a father, and also being the son of a male, what do you say is your earliest memory of the ideal father, and how does that influence your parenting today?
My dad is the earliest memory of the ideal father, not just because he's my dad, but yeah, I think that's my earliest memory of an ideal father. Also, both of my grandfathers were very active in my life. I had the blessing of being able to know and have relationships with both of my grandfathers, my maternal and paternal grandfather. And I try to let my kids and my grandkids see those men through me. Over the years, I've gained a couple of wisdom nuggets along the way, even from my wife's grandfather. I still hold some key things that he's instilled in me as a father away from home. But again, my dad, he's probably the best example of a father to me.
Thank you for that. I know for me, I'm always thinking about, you know, the one person who had probably the greatest influence aside from, you know, my dad was my uncle. He was just this big guy, you know, who was so super sensitive. And he was the one person who taught me about the sensitivity of men, that it was okay, you know, to be in that space. And I'm always thinking about him, you know, rest in peace. But he was like, you know, aside from my dad, he was probably the second kind of image of an ideal father. So I definitely, you know, appreciate that. So here's a recent study. And so, because, you know, I see you as a successful man, doing your thing, making some moves and making a lot of sacrifices to make sure that generational wealth is acquired for your family. And I know that your children are kind of watching in your step and following some of the things that you're doing. But in a recent study, it suggests that there was a correlation between successful men and their relationship with their fathers. And one of the factors that influenced those relationships included creating a sense of connectedness. How has parenting impact the way that you view women, and how has it had an effect on the way you give love and connect with others?
Wow, that's a very, very strong question. Well, as I got older, and it's kind of unfortunate to come to the realization at a later age, but I realized that my upbringing and parental dynamic was different than most, and it's unfortunate because sometimes we lack that in our community, African American community. I had and was shown love all my life, um, from grandparents, aunts, uncle, to my parents. And although my parents divorced when I was young, um, and they were young as well, my mom never talked bad about my dad to me. Um, my parental and maternal grandparents were married on both sides. And as a kid, I saw and felt love. I saw that from them and through them. I strongly believe that this, I guess, advantage that I had would be considered uh, uh, something that's outside of the norm of the African American community or the Black community. But that love that I've seen and the things that my mom instilled in me, that pretty much gave me a view of respect for women, to stand up for women. Um, even today, if I see a woman that's being mistreated, I come to an alert and feel like I want to come into the to defense mode. Even if we're driving and I see something that may seem like a little abrupt of an interaction, you know, I tend to pause just to make sure that the woman is safe and is fine. We've done it a couple times since we've been here in Minnesota. But I think just my entire upbringing, I've had what I call an advantage to be able to have those examples of love and the examples of positive treatment to women, just within my own family.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I'm hoping that, you know, that's something that even my sons, you know, having two boys, can, you know, move forward with in their lives and kind of demonstrate with their sons, as a woman who raised her sons, you know, along pretty much, that, you know, maybe something that I demonstrated. And because I can't be a man, you know, I can't show them how to be a man, but I can expose them to what I see as a reflection of a true man. And hopefully those men that I've exposed them to have demonstrated in such a way that they can take that into their families, and that they have taken it, you know, into their families. So I appreciate that. I appreciate you looking out for the ladies out there. So as a mom, one of the things that I do hope my sons learn from my parenting, as I mentioned, was a power of honesty and vulnerability. And that strength actually comes from their ability and willingness to express all of their emotions, which was echoed in a panel discussion that I sat on Saturday, hosted by the Rebalance Life Wellness Association Men's Health and Education Center. So they talked about, like, you know, embracing all of your emotions as a man, and that it doesn't make you less than a man when you do that. It doesn't make you less than a man when you shed a tear and you show your emotion. As a father, what is the one thing that you hope your son or daughter learn from your role and take into their own parenting?
Yeah, I have 2 boys and a girl, just as you do. And we tell our kids often, being a parent is a choice. You have to choose to be a parent. It's more than just, you know, the interaction of conception, but to be a parent, it's a day-to-day walk. It doesn't stop just because the kids are over 18 or over 21. You know, we're still parents. We reiterate that babies don't ask to come here, and they definitely don't come here to be abused and neglected. And unfortunately, in the Black community, we have to relearn parenting, and are be allowed to become parents. And this is just a retraining. Our heritage, where Black people, African American people come from, we already had that instilled in us, but we were stripped of that right to be able to be parents. Our children were stripped from our hands. So to be a parent is something that's still fairly new to us as a community. And I want my kids to know that communication is important. Children seeing parents talk out problems and disagreements will help them understand how to deal with their own emotions. And so I know I talked about, you know, slavery days and all of that, but we weren't taught how to communicate through emotions and problems. You know, that's one thing I think is real key. And I tell my kids, it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be upset or frustrated. It's those are natural emotions, but how you respond to those emotions can change a child's life. And so if you can have those communication opportunities to, especially if your kids see you upset, or if they see you and your spouse in a disagreement, or unfortunately, if they see you arguing, but to see you come back and sit down at the table and them visually see you talking those things out will be very impactful for your kids in the long run, because then now you're teaching and you're retraining our society on how to communicate and deal with those emotions that may come up.
Absolutely. That, you know, that's really key, because I think that oftentimes our young people becoming parents for the first time think that there's some book that's out there that's going to give them the step-by-step instruction on how to be a good parent. And they start reflecting on our own parenting, and, you know, they poke holes and they see flaws, and, you know, we have to own the fact that, yeah, there are some mistakes that I made. You know, even parents are fools. You know, we've made mistakes. We've been challenged. You know, we've tried to retract. We didn't follow through on punishments. Like, there's a lot of things that, you know, if we could have changed, you know, we would. But it's about growth and learning, and identify what are those best practices, what are those things that actually worked, and then be ready to be flexible, because our kids are so different. You know, it's not a cookie cutter, you know, approach, and you have to be flexible and ready to deal with the fact that you're birthing different people, different human beings. And I can say for myself that all 3 of my children are completely different. Sometimes I look at them like, whose parents? Where's your parents? Because it could not be me, you know? And so, yeah, like, just kind of getting them to a space where they don't believe that there's a cookie cutter approach to doing parenting. I think that's really key, and just being ready for the dynamics. So what advice would you give? So we got young fathers out here really wanting to be fathers, young fathers who's becoming fathers, you know, or young men wanting to become fathers, and young fathers who are becoming fathers for the very first time. As a husband, right? What type of advice would you give another man, you know, who's becoming a father, has a wife at home, and currently experiencing this whole thing about fatherhood and balancing co-parenting for the very first time?
Being present, I think, is probably one of the biggest things, tools that I can say. Being present. Don't let work or things outside of your immediate household inundate you with time away from your family, time away from your spouse. Earlier on in our relationship, before we even got married, you know, I figured that I needed to make sure that I distanced myself from, you know, my friends, especially if they weren't married. That to me is key, because I don't want any external influences that can ruin my relationship. Hanging out with friends that aren't married, that aren't on the same wavelength. Yeah, I'm still friends with them. You know, I can pick up the phone and call, or we can talk. But hanging out with them is rare. But being present, so not only being present for your spouse, but being present for your kids. 10 minutes with a child, 10 minutes means the world to them. 10 minutes is like spending an hour or 2 hours with them. You just sit down and color with them, or sit down and put a puzzle together. As a young child, they're going to remember that for years to come. I remember to this day things that my dad did with me, and my grandparents. You know, just those things will still be embedded into their memory. So just being present is, I think, is probably one of the easiest things that I can say. I can say a lot more, but just being present.
Awesome. And I appreciate that. And that's something that you know, I would like to kind of share even with my sons, being present in your relationship, both with your children and with your spouse. And also, you know, recognizing that sometimes you might have to lean away from those old friends that are not married, that's not kind of creating a community that's reflective of your values and who you are. So those are some really good pieces of pearls, you know, for our young men. So I want to thank you. And I want to thank you for giving me this time. I know this was a quick interview and we have so much more to talk about. Our conversations are always enlightening. This is time for the lightning round. So are you ready for some of these lightning questions?
I'm going to be. All right. Let me
20 seconds, 20 seconds. And you got 4 seconds to respond to each one of them. Are you ready for that?
All right. Let me get my. All right.
Got it? You got it? All right. First one, breast milk versus formula.
Breast milk.
Competition versus everyone gets a trophy.
Competition.
Parents who use leashes for children.
Do not agree.
Spanking versus timeouts.
Can't answer that one.
Gender neutrality versus gender assignment.
Gender assignment.
All right, thank you so much. Thanks for participating in our lightning rounds. And we'll talk a little bit more in another meeting or another interview about spanking versus timeouts, because I know you got a lot in your head for that. But thank you again for giving me your time. And I want to thank all of our listeners. It was a pleasure, Mr. Maurice Perkins, for coming in and talking to us. And I want to thank your wife for allowing us to take some of your time, because I know you are not being present at this moment. But thank you, Alicia, for allowing him to give us this time. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. If there was something that you heard today that energized you or triggered additional questions, please remember to comment below, like, share, and subscribe. And join us again next week for part 3 of My Father, a Conversation. Happy Father's Day month to all of the fathers out there. Please remember to go out into your community and embrace someone. They are waiting for you. Continue to live your best life.
Hello, Embracing Arms community. My name is Maurice Perkins, Director of Marketing and Communications at the University of Minnesota Boyne Health. And I'm stopping by to remind you to live your best life.
My prescription, boy, this is my medicine. The world can be sickening and living in house resemblance. Not to mention the media's effort to keep us in the most simplistic state of mind. Lowest age bracket committing the highest rate of crime. People dying way before they hit the age of prime. Thinking success only happens